book of Acts, chapter 15. Amen. Thank God for you, Sister Carol Wayne.
Amen. Amen. Yes.
Acts chapter 15, oddly enough, is a place strategically after one of the great joys of the church, and yet we find Acts chapter 15. There are a few verses here that happen to be some of the ugliest verses recorded as it relates to the church. And amazingly, it comes after one of the great ministry moments. One of the ugliest moments happened to come right after one of the best moments. And it's you'll find these words recorded in verse 36 of chapter 15 in the book of Acts. The Word of God reads, "Sometime later, Paul said to Barnabas, 'Let's go back and visit the believers in all the towns where we preach the word of the Lord and see how they are doing.' Barnabas wanted to take John, also called Mark, with him. But Paul did not think it was wise to take him because he had deserted them in Pamphylia and had not continued with them in the work. They had such a sharp disagreement that they parted company." Tell your neighbor, they fell out. Barnabas took Mark and sailed for Cyprus, but Paul chose Silas and left. Commended by the believers to the grace of the Lord, he went through Syria and Cilicia, strengthening the churches. May God add a blessing to the reading and to the hearers thereof. One of the ugliest moments recorded about the church we find right here, where it says they had such a sharp disagreement that they fell out, that they parted company. Look to your neighbor and say, "Neighbor, we'll make it together." Look them in the eyeball. Find that dot that's right in the middle of their eyeball. And I want you to look at them until they almost get nervous looking at you. I want you to say, "Neighbor, it might get rough, and it might get tough, but we'll make it together." Amen. Amen. We find these passages this morning as a great consolation to the body of Christ, that it does not matter how rough and tough things get, we can still make it together. I've shared before, as a country boy out of Arkansas, we didn't have a whole lot, but I do remember that it was an unspoken rule that you don't lay down in the house while you're still mad at each other. My brothers and I, we didn't have the luxury of going to different rooms. It wasn't but 3 rooms in the house. So we didn't have a whole lot of options as if I get mad. We didn't have a door. And so we just would go from one end of the couch to the other. And at nighttime, we would turn that couch into a bed. So it was not as if we had the luxury of going somewhere else because we get mad. We live in a day and time now where things have shifted. Folk can go hours, can go days and months, and unfortunately even years. Mad, angry with one another to such a point that we even forgot what we were mad about. But we just know that we refuse to come into the presence of people. We refuse to call, refuse to be in the same rooms. And we will even say it as if we are saying we're being mature. I don't need to be around them because I may say something that I don't need to say. Y'all know y'all have heard that before. I don't need to be around them because I might do something that I don't want to do. Unfortunately, the devil has an individual like that right where he wants him. Because as long as he can keep us from getting together, he masters in divisive attacks against organisms that are typically designed to stay together. For instance, families, we got to keep it together.
Yes, amen, amen.
It's going to get rough.
Amen, amen.
And the ride from here to there is going to get tough every now and then. But how many of you know we need to keep it together? When people get married and they stand at the altar, or, even if you're married in your living room or on the porch, no one gets married with the desire to split up.
That's right.
Nobody runs a race to want to be second. No family is structured because we want to be fragmented and fractured along the way.
Amen.
But stuff happens in life and it can cause us to feel like we can't make it. But your neighbor just looked at it and said, we'll make it.
Amen.
But what is contingent on that is that we make it together. And in this text, what we find prior to Paul and Barnabas splitting, keep in mind it was after one of the biggest ministry moments that they had experienced together. They had just convinced those that were a part of the church that Jews and Gentiles could be saved, not because of what we do, but because of what Jesus did on Calvary. Your neighbor may say, well, what did Jesus do? Tell him he died. Didn't he die? He died so that the sinner man could be saved. And he died and stayed dead Friday night. Saturday morning, he was dead. Saturday noon, he was dead. Saturday night, he was still dead. But early Sunday morning, tell your neighbor he got up. If your neighbor won't talk to you, find another neighbor. Tell your neighbor he got up. With all power in his hand. He did that so that the sinner would know that he died for all to be saved. Paul and Barnabas had preached that in such a way where those that were part of the church, the Pharisees, those that were Hellenistic Jews, those that questioned about the ideas of being circumcised and coming into the body, they questioned this idea that anybody could be saved. You mean to tell me that you can't be born into salvation, but anybody can come to know Christ as their Savior? And they had problems with that. But the good news about the good news is when the good news gets out, it trumps all the bad news. And that's why I think if we stick to the script and we keep talking about the good news that Jesus died. I know we live in a world where so much negativity, so many divisive influences, so many people that are saying this and that, but we got to keep focusing on the good news that he died for us, and the end of the story is that he's coming back again. And so Paul and Barnabas had just experienced one of the greatest ministry moments because souls were added. Many that were Gentiles at the beginning of this chapter came to believe in Jesus Christ. People that had never been saved before became saved, all because Paul and Barnabas were working together. And when we look at this text, my brothers and sisters, keep in mind, they did not divide over doctrine. They divided because of a difference of opinion. Now, when we look at this, this is what was happening. As they came together, Paul said, let's go check on the people that we've already brought into the fold. Let's go check on the churches we've already planted. And we want to make sure that they're doing all right. Let's go see how they're doing. They were not divided on the focus of the going or the mission, but rather they were focusing on the growing aspects of the members. Because Paul wanted to go on the mission and focus on the mission, but Barnabas wanted to focus on the member. Because he was saying, it's no need of us going if we can't take John Mark. Paul had problems with that because John Mark had abandoned them when things got tough for the church. And how many of you know when people do you wrong, it's hard to forget that? I I mean, if somebody says they're going to do something for you and they don't do it, I don't care how long you've been a part of the church, that sometimes is hard when somebody look you in your eye and they say they're going to do something and they don't do it. And Paul was tripping over the fact that Barnabas wanted to go get John Mark. The same one that left him when the church was under persecution. He didn't check in with him. He didn't tell him, I'm getting ready to go back to Jerusalem. He just left them. And Paul couldn't get past that. And Barnabas was saying, if we're going to go and check on the churches, let's make sure we take my nephew, John Mark. It's a critical moment because family has a way of entering into right and wrong. And here's an instance where Barnabas was speaking up, not just for his biological family, but he was speaking up because they were all a part of God's family. Barnabas was not saying John Mark didn't mess up, but he was in essence saying, in spite of him messing up, I still want him because he's a member of the body. Now, so here's an issue. Two folk that got two different focuses. Paul focusing on the mission. Barnabas focusing on the members. And this is where spiritual maturity is important, because once we have spiritual maturity, we can focus on the master and get past all of our divisive influences. They were not disagreeing because of doctrine. They were not disagreeing because of some religious law. It was merely differences of opinion. And that can stop a parade right in its track. That can stop the momentum of a family. That can stop the momentum of a church. That can stop the moving of God and God's will when people get stuck on divisive influences and the differences of opinion. The text tells us, my brothers and sisters, something when we look here at verse 37. It says, but Paul did not want to take John Mark with him. Verse 38, but Paul did not think it was wise to take him because he had deserted them and had not continued with them. Two people looking at one thing in two different ways. In boxing, there are typically three judges that judge during a boxing match. And they position the judges strategically in three different places around this squared ring. Three judges can look at the same fight and from their vantage point see it in totally different ways. Just last week was one of the greatest and biggest fights of our day. It was where two men fought, and after the fight was over, the judges looked at that same fight in such a way where one had a landslide for one fight. The other had a landslide for the other fight. And the other judge saw it as a tie. Believe it or not, my brothers and sisters, when we are positioned in different places, we sometimes see the same thing in so many different ways. We have to ask ourselves, is it worth me losing it all, or can we work together? Because if we work together, we will make it and complete the mission that we're setting out to do. The ultimate mission then was to go and check on the other believers. But Paul and Barnabas, they had different views. This is what I would like to say about the church, or this church in particular. If you have ever been hurt, my brothers and sisters, because of the church, on behalf of whoever hurt you, on behalf of whoever let you down, I apologize on their behalf. And I'm just begging you, give the church one more try. I know you may have been lied to or lied on. I know you may have been let down, looked over, or looked down on. But I'm saying I'm sorry on behalf of any church and any of God's folk that may have caused you not to be able to go forward with God's folk. And I just want to say, come on back to the church, because we can make it if we work together. My brothers and sisters, if we were all to try to decide how to get to one location from this place, if we're not careful, there'll be 5, if not 20, different suggestions as to how we can get there and what's the quickest and best way. If you think I'm playing about it, if we were to write down right now, what is the quickest way to get to Sweet Sue's? Some folk would say just ride the loop. Some folk would say go down 5th Street. Some folk would say, no, you go down 31 and just ride it, take a left when you get to the loop, and then you go on up to the spur, and whoop, there it is. And unfortunately, there are folk that are trying to get to heaven that do the same way. Denominations have been started because of that. Churches have split because of that. Ministries have divided because of that. Pastors have quit because of that. Deacons have walked out because of that, because of different opinions. Everybody got an opinion. You came in here and sat down in a seat just like you got a seat to sit on and a tail to sit on. Everybody got an opinion. But my brothers and sisters, this is what we have to do when we're a part of the same body. We have to be mature enough to know it ain't gonna always be my way. Do I have any help in here? Sometimes when we have church get-togethers, they're gonna serve chocolate ice cream and I want vanilla. I don't have to kick buckets over and walk out and cuss folk out. I wish I would have had some bluebell. You come up here with some boy. I wish I would have had vanilla. You came in here with some chocolate. Sometimes these things are going to be different. There are going to be moments that you're going to have to tolerate some things, not over doctrine, because if somebody comes in preaching some heresy, that's different. If somebody tell you you need to get to heaven in a whole lot of ways, no, you need to walk out. If somebody can come in here and tell you what Jesus was just a man, he was just a dude, just like everybody else, he was nothing about him that was divine, no, you need to walk out. But if we get to the point where we get perturbed because somebody wants to buy white flowers and you want it yellow, a choir, the praise team was going to sing 3 songs, and one Sunday they sung 2, and you were like, oh no. We have to learn how to grow up. We can't go anywhere if we can't grow up together. And so in growing up, one of the truths I see in this text is that in any group, in any family, there is always going to be different opinions. We don't need to have schisms and divisions over everything. Do I have any help in here? This is not Calvary against Triumph. This is not Bishop Greenleaf against Skanks. This is not Lady May arguing with Pastor Grace. This is just a fact where we are stronger together when we work together. We're not sitting up trying to go against one another, but we need to work together because we'll make it together. It's going to be different opinions. And I'm well aware